I assume by that we're ready to go. I'd like to call Squamish F&A Committee to order. If City Clerk will note attendance, we will move on. All right, first order of business is agenda approval. Are there any alterations or comments in regards to the agenda? All right, so objections, we will take the agenda as presented as approved. Hearing none, we'll move on. That's approval of minutes dated January 17th, 2024. And any questions, comments, or revisions to regards to the minutes? No. Any unless there are objections, we'll take them as presented as approved. And no objections, we'll take those on. Let's back up. I do want to do public comments. Are there any individuals either here or online wishing to make public comment?
So I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome a new staff member in the finance department, if that's okay. We'll let her go if she wishes as well. So we've got Jen Hughes with us here today. She is the new budget analyst for the city of Squamish. Let me tell you, we are very lucky to have Jen on board with the department. Her enthusiasm and energy has been infectious overall in the department itself. But I think most of all is her communication and her attention to detail, which I think you're going to really see when we start getting into a lot of the kind of budget items that are due for the end of the year as well. So with that said, I know Gina's really excited back there to have her on board. Certainly I am too, and she'll be a force overall for this city and a positive force at that. So with that said, I'd like to just have her come up. And I know it's
I'm very excited to come here and serve the city of Snoqualmie. I'm coming from the city of Renton. I spent almost 9 years there. I was hired originally as a finance analyst and then moved my way up to a operations manager. And so I'm just excited to dig in and be able to work with all of you and serve the community.
And thank you. Drew, I gave you a look, but it's always bugged me. Staff and council members, administration, whatever, we're all public too. If we want to get up there, we can go ahead and make comment. The administrator?
I just have a request. Everybody check their computers because there is an echo in the room. Somebody's not muted.
Doesn't have to be that one.
Should be gone now. You still hearing echo?
Sir, sir.
It doesn't have to be the mic too.
My mic was on, but is now off. So,
Okay.
all right, let's get back on the agenda. Consideration of claims approval report dated February 12th, 2024. As chair, I will note, I received no emails and saw no emails in question of the warrants. In my review, I had no further questions. Were there any other questions from the committee? Go ahead.
I did just have one quick question. I had sent an email and I'm anticipating that I'll get a response back, so I don't need to have it right now. It looked like there were possibly some duplicates on there. I'm assuming it's just because the landscaper sent 3 months worth of bills at the same time. They had different invoice numbers, but it was for the same dollar amount. So I'd emailed earlier today, but I anticipate I'll get an answer back before council. So that was my only question.
Okay.
Our park supervisor has been out ill for a while, so those invoices kind of piled up a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so they were just several months of
Several weeks.
the same value. Okay, not duplicates. Okay.
I've not quite seen an email yet, so I'm interested in potentially who you may have sent it to. Hopefully it included me.
I actually didn't send it to you. I sent it to Jerry and then I CC Jeff.
Ah, okay. All right. Feel free to send it to
Should
me
it go
as
to you as
well.
well?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Are you okay with proceeding with the
That's fine.
warrants based on that? Okay. Any objections to proceeding with the claims report as presented? Nope. All right, hearing none, we'll move forward with the claims report, bring that to council. Let's move to Agenda Bill 24027, ordinance amending SMC chapters 5.04.5.08 regarding business license, business and occupation tax.
All right, so this is certainly a fun one, and we do have our city attorney online as well that can answer any of the questions. With that said, this is primarily a housekeeping item. The state, for a various period of time, has worked to create a model ordinance along with AWC, basically, that is provides a lot of equity and accountability overall to how cities across the state collect B&O taxes. And so consequently, they released a model ordinance back in 2019 that the city did not adopt at that time, not by council's action necessarily, but because it wasn't presented to council by staff. And so consequently, we're coming back to you based on the hard work of David to actually clean up a lot of the language within our municipal code to make sure it's reflective of that model ordinance that we are required to adopt. And so with that said, there's a lot of changes. Unfortunately, you do not have a red line copy, and that's probably what you're looking for. You
Yep.
probably noticed there are no red lines.
Mhm.
So I'd like to hand out, it's the copy today. It
Thank you.
will include those red lines. We understand this is relatively new to you overall. And so if we must table it, I think that's valid for sure. But in essence, there's a lot of changes to this. A lot of those changes are going to take place around pages 22, around page 22, kind of as a starting point overall. There's a lot of not definitional, but changing it from like finance officer to finance director, and a lot of those kind of technical updates as well. So what are you going to see when it comes to this? In essence, the model ordinance works to exclude gross receipts from services from the income factor denominator attributable to jurisdictions where the taxpayer would not be subject to tax, and establishing guidelines for the application of an alternative apportionment method, basically. What does that mean? Exactly. It actually benefits the city overall. So in essence, what they tried to present in the past or prevent in the past is basically two separate jurisdictions taxing the same gross receipts, basically. So in the past, basically, if there was a city out there, for example, that did not tax B&O, multiple cities could claim that gross receipts that would be generated within that city that did not tax B&O taxes at that time. So they wanted to make sure, no, it's true. It's come up with an apportionment
Go to-
method.
I have to pick my favorite, some little town somewhere who doesn't have a B&O tax and say, I want to claim their
Correct.
B&O.
Yes,
Well, that's nasty.
that is very
Oh.
nasty. So they tried to clean it up, but they didn't really clean it up fully. So in essence, what they're attempting to do here is they're attempting to reset the denominator of that service income formula or factor in this case, basically, to make sure that they're also not only just excluding that gross income from the numerator, but also excluding from that other city that doesn't tax B&Os, but also just subtracting that from the denominator. So in essence, it will or has resulted in more money for the city overall over time, because now the apportionment factor is a little bit more in the favor of the city overall. So I know that's complicated. We can get into examples to council itself as well. Other changes include a service apportionment definition of customer location hierarchy, which is another complicated factor associated with this, changing the annual tax filing deadlines, linking the change to April 15th for annual tax filing returns, changing the definition of engaging in business, and then other such technical changes as well across all the kind of state laws and House bills that have been approved by the state legislature as well, to make sure that this is reflective of RCWs appropriately. So in essence, this is really an attempt to clean up our code to make sure it's reflective of the model B&O ordinance. It really should have been done back in 2020 But here we are now, thanks to the hard work of the city attorney. We're attempting to get this updated at this point. So with that said, I'd like, if David has any further comments, basically, I probably did a hatchet job on exactly what the changes were overall. And I'm sure he's a lot more eloquent when it comes to this, but I'd like to provide him with an opportunity if possible.
Drew, you explained the technicalities of the calculations better than I could have. My limited contribution to this will just be to note that, as Drew was saying, these are changes that are the result of a legislatively mandated model tax or B&O tax ordinance that AWC and the participating cities prepared, and that a lot of these changes really are changes to definitions as to how you determine where a customer is located, for purposes of apportioning services income that maybe have a connection to multiple different cities. But I think, like I said, Drew explained the technicalities of the calculations better than I could anyway. So I'll leave it at that.
Go ahead.
So I'm somewhat new to this committee, but those of you who remember me from Parks and Public Works will recognize this question. Is this an option? Or is this something that the state said, hey, here's the new law, you got to do it? That's the biggest question that I have.
Yeah, so David, I would probably say that a lot of this is mandatory.
Yes.
We did include also a 2003 update to the model ordinance as well that deals with the publishing income as well. So if you're a newspaper, for example, there's certain exemptions applied to those publishers, which didn't really necessarily would impact our municipal code. They would just follow it at any way. But we want to make sure that we're as clean as, as complementary of the RCWs and model ordinance as possible. So.
Go ahead.
You said 2003, was it
Oh,
2023?
Yeah, 2023,
Okay.
sorry.
So then one other thing was, I thought you said that it would have an effect on the city's revenue. Is that correct?
Yeah, so probably just minor. It's hard to really calculate because this took place back then necessarily, and it's hard to, tease out what the change might have resulted in overall. But because it's reducing the service income denominator portion of that, so the factor is a fraction, and that fraction is multiplied against, it's really added to a payroll factor and then multiplied against the gross receipts overall. So that service income factor is a fraction, and it's changing the denominator of that fraction itself. So because you're subtracting from that denominator, in essence, the denominator is
Small
smaller,
denominator,
right?
yes.
It's smaller overall. So ideally, as a consequence of that, we would have been able to charge more against the gross receipts of a business rather than less, which was under the previous law. And there's been fluctuations, so over time.
But it's not a huge windfall that
Probably
we're
not,
expecting.
no, it's not a
Right.
huge windfall.
Which
but
would
it is-
also be an expense to our businesses. So I was wondering, because there's
Correct.
kind of like the other side of it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so this isn't something on the order of the kinds of
It's
taxes we were talking
yeah.
about in our other discussions.
Correct,
Right.
yep.
So the time sensitivity of this,
I mean, so we'd love to get this updated as soon as possible, right? But I do understand that council, the committee did not receive a red line copy as basically stated as a part of the packet. So we want to make sure that we give you the time and the flexibility, right, to go through the changes and that so that you can see what those changes look like. And then, my proposal would be to bring that back for the next F&A committee meeting after you've had an opportunity to read that. And honestly, that's my fault. So for not checking the F&A packet, right, to make sure that indeed the red line was incorporated.
when is the effectivity of this? Was the intent to have this effective for 2024 taxes?
So I'm gonna have to probably rely upon David for that answer itself. In essence, the RCWs changed for the year 2020. And our code wasn't reflective of those changes back then. So it's a question of whether if the businesses were following our code which is out of compliance with the RCW or if they were following the RCW. And yeah,
So David, also help me, why do we have code that is duplicative of RCW?
Well, so it's just kind of the way the mechanics of how BNO has been implemented across the state. The way that the BNO statutes work is that it allows a city to adopt BNO tax. It doesn't require the city to adopt a BNO tax. And there are different types of BNO taxes and different amounts, different percentages that local jurisdictions can adopt. So it's sort of an enabling ordinance. It's not a prescriptive ordinance in every way. But in order to make sure that taxes are collected fairly across multiple jurisdictions, when a transaction touches on multiple jurisdictions, you might have a business that manufactures in Bellevue, but they have a showroom in Redmond, and the purchaser orders it online in Snoqualmie. They got to figure out who gets the taxes from all of that. And so what the state legislature did, kind of as Drew was describing, is they wanted to have a model ordinance that would equitably assign those multi-jurisdictional revenues to the appropriate jurisdiction. And so they tasked the Association of Washington Cities, AWC, with creating a task force that would consist of different jurisdictions across the state that have a B&O tax, to say, okay, how can we equitably divvy up these income streams that touch multiple jurisdictions? And so the outcome of that was handed down in 2019 and was supposed to be effective statewide. And so again, it's not really so much the statute dictates this, it's that the process dictates that everybody has this particular type of formula in their code. And so we have to put this into our local code. The variations are in the percentages that different jurisdictions adopt for their B&O tax. Some it's a smaller amount, some tax up to the cap set in state law. So hopefully that answers the question. There is room for some local variation, but not on these definitional things in terms of how services income is apportioned.
I'm not sure how a small business owner is supposed to figure this out, but not our
And just
problem.
if I can just kind of follow up on a point that Drew made as well. So B&O taxes are self-reported by businesses. And so I don't really have any way of knowing whether since 2019, when this particular formula was supposed to be adopted statewide, I don't really have a way of knowing whether every business was reporting it consistent with that statewide requirement, or if they were following Snoqualmie's out-of-date code for a few years. And so it's hard to say what the fiscal impact of that really is, but we need to get it consistent with state law as soon as possible, so that if we need to pursue any collections, any underpayments or non-payments, we want to make sure we have a code that is enforceable and not unenforceable.
The original intent leading up to this meeting was to have this proceed to next council for a first reading, potentially a waive, and then a second reading. But as committee just received this, you made recommendation to hold off till next committee meeting?
I'm more than happy to do so. Hopefully we've explained the changes basically to the code itself. We can certainly incorporate the redlined version into the packet for council to read for Monday.
That's a minimum.
Mhm.
Opinions, Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, just I would feel more confident that I could go into the council meeting if I knew that I'd had time to just read through the changes and make sure that I knew exactly what was different. So I would prefer to just have that time to come back to the next FNA and talk. That's just my opinion.
Okay, but given that we'll have two readings,
Well, that's a fair point.
this is not getting away. It's just not happening. Under this condition, it's not getting away.
Well, that
So-
is a fair point. Yeah, that there would be 2 readings presumably. So that would give us time. That's a good point.
I'm agreeable to moving this forward because it doesn't seem like we have a ton of discretion on this. I would have some concerns about going after businesses without having a little bit more information to the extent that they were complying with the code as written, even if it was outdated. That's where I would have concerns. I also would be concerned about waiting longer and then giving our businesses less notice of the change that we're making if we're requiring that they comply by April. So I think that's where my concerns would be. Because if we wait another, 2 weeks to move this forward, then they'll have 2 weeks less if they're aware of our outdated code to make whatever changes they need to in order to be in compliance. I say that as someone who does not do taxes for a living, though, so take that with a grain of salt.
Well, we don't. I've never heard of us go out and audit the calculations of B and O taxes by our businesses. I've heard us audit that the businesses are self-identifying for B and O. I mean, does this give opportunity? To phrase this appropriately, because opportunity is a bad word.
Billy?
Gives us the ability to go back and at least for the first quarter of 2024, say retroactively, you were supposed to be using this equation and not that equation, and you owe a few extra bit of money.
I mean, so it's unfortunately the tax form, right, doesn't calculate what the service income factor would look like, right, overall. So it is very self-reported back to us. So there may be some challenges in regards to that itself, but overall, yes, we do intend to conduct a B&O tax audit, right? And take a look at prior business and what they've reported to the city itself, and whether that's reflective of the data that we can acquire to make sure that they're reporting accurately to the city overall. So
B&O is done quarterly on the business or yearly?
quarterly. Mm-hmm.
I guess the concern I have is with the retroactive ability here to go back in first quarter for this year, which is by the time we get this done, we'll be done. I have issues with that aspect of it.
Yeah, so we'll have to work out a process, right, overall. We'll go back and think about that exactly, right, and how we want to potentially pursue any sort of structure overall, but this
Well,
is a
can-
difficult challenge.
Can the effectivity of this be second quarter? Versus versus beginning of the year?
The city has been out of compliance with the RCWs. Those companies
Shame on
also
us.
have to report, right, back to the state as well for their B&O taxes, and other cities too. There's probably a strong likelihood that a lot of those businesses have probably been using the state, right, apportionment method, right, that was provided in the RCW, even though it was out of compliant or not, our code wasn't compliant with it. So maybe we can make it effective for the second quarter overall, but I'm looking to the city attorney to provide some advice when it comes to that. In essence, the state law was in place back in 2019. All the cities should have adopted it for the start of 2020. It wasn't completed here.
Then again, shame on us.
Right. And now we need to make sure that we follow up on any sort of legal obligations that may be a result of that. Otherwise, it may be construed potentially as a gift of public funds. Right? So.
Okay,
Mhm.
please have that conversation with the attorney and see if there are concerns or options in regards to that. Any other questions or? Do we want to move this forward for first reading? Or do you want to hold it off a week? We're okay? All right, we'll move forward, first reading. I don't think any of us will recommend a waive during that meeting, so.
Fair enough. Yeah.
All
Mhm.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get back to the top. I believe that was our one and only agenda bill. Discussion items. first one up is comprehensive plan schedule.
Hello there. Good evening, council members. Emily Arteche, Community Development Director. Today, I wanted to just brief you brief you on the comprehensive plan, a status update, a gauge, or maybe a dashboard of where we're at and where we intend to go, and get some general feedback from you on what you think of next steps. Let me just show a graphic that was developed, I think will be extremely helpful. So here you can see this matrix that was developed about the comprehensive plan with the elements that we're working on right now on the left, and then the calendar of where we're at, in this calendar year. I'd like to kind of think about this as a car with a gas tank about half full, and the destination point is about halfway, and nobody in the back is complaining. So if we're all on this road trip together, we're making great progress. We still got fuel. We've still got, we're making our marks about where we're at and where we need to be by the end of the year. So you can see on this schedule over in the November time period that we would have a city council meeting with potentially a resolution adopting the comprehensive plan at that time. Now, we're not there yet. We're just at the beginning of the year. And we are compiling, the information needed to get us to December. And if I can move on to the next graphic, I want to show you, let's see if it will flip over there. Yeah, this graphic about how we're going to get to December. So currently, you've been probably following along with community engagement, planning commission meetings. We just had one element presented at the previous council committee meeting, council workshops, agency comments. You've heard about this. These are all moving us to the draft goals and policies that are represented in this big blue bar. Here's where F&A comes into play. We'd like to take the work that's been done thus far and present it at future council roundtables. This is an idea. We don't have to do it, but it might be the most logical and methodical way of absorbing the information and the bodies of work that have been done thus far. So we're proposing a series of workshops at these roundtables starting next week on the 12th with economic development, with land use and housing on the 12th, followed by economic development and transportation on the 26th, and capital facilities and the environment on the 11th. And we'd like to get some feedback on whether or not that's a good idea, if that's good use of your time, if you have better ideas. And I'll just leave it at that.
So I'll give some feedback. And it's a yeah, but yes, I think we ought to have these discussions, but I also think there needs to be a broader discussion of why are we doing the comp plan? What effect does it have on our future decision-making? Because it really is I'm not sure that we have on the council full understanding that it should be a guiding document to a lot of our future actions. So I think there needs to be that higher level discussion of why is it and what effect it should have on us. And then we can get into with that context in mind, get into these conversations you're talking about. That's at least why I put it as an item on a list possible for council retreat discussion of what is a comp plan? Why is a comp plan? What does it mean to us? I didn't put those words, it's too cliche. But at least along those to give that context in these discussions moving on. But yeah, I do think we need to have those discussions. I just think we ought to have that higher discussion
First.
Yeah.
Do we have a tentative date for the council retreat?
What were we thinking? We haven't set a date, I don't think.
So we might need to adjust the schedule a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
We've got
Dive in on the
a little
12th.
bit of time. I don't want to let it go too long.
I was just saying we could also just start with that on the 12th then. At the
Or we
first
can start with
roundtable.
that if you want to do, take it out of away from the retreat and do your first roundtable is
What is it?
What is a comp plan and why?
And one thing that comes to mind is that I don't know if you remember, but not about a year ago in the fall of 2022, we met with the Department of Commerce and we conducted a very detailed and thorough presentation called the Short Course on Local Planning. And in there was a segment about comprehensive planning and why that's important at the local level. So some of that information we might be able to draw upon from some of the videos, passages in that presentation.
Mhm.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and if you could, yes, with this plan, but have that first roundtable. Let's not wait for the council retreat. Make that first roundtable. Why comp plan? And what it means. And then, yeah, let's move forward. Right?
So do you think that would be a 45-minute presentation, or can you, is it like a 10-minute and then a presentation of one of the modules?
No, it's not a 45-minute presentation to talk about, how the comprehensive plan, relies on, the statewide goals and Growth Management Act and why where that legislation comes from. But I mean, there might be Q&A, there might be just general discussion.
I'm also looking at, so for our land use activities, any that we are thinking of moving forward with should be in the comp plan, documented comp plan, so that, if we were to go to try to annex some land that is not currently in our comp plan, I think we'd get sideways with probably the state, not King County, just because they like getting us sideways. Okay, and also that the comp plan should be driving our planning as far as utilities. Those growth projections should roll into our utility rate studies. So again, that's what I mean is, what is the comp plan for us? It should be a guiding document for a lot of the city activities. Utility rate planning, capacity planning for utilities. It'll hit your transportation. You've got the multimodal we just have discussed. There's impact of those things if we're really using the comp plan. Now we could choose not, some cities don't, do it, put it on the shelf, and then life goes on. If it's really working though, it affects you in those later decisions. Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, kind of along those lines was, I'd imagine a potential conversation topic could be, how do we ensure that this is a document that we reference, and what are kind of the metrics you could use to make sure that we are following the guiding document, if that's the council's desire. So for example, I just thought of one thing off the top of my head, just as an example, is whenever we have an agenda bill, at the top of the agenda bill, it has a list of things like financial impacts, et cetera. Like, what if there was a line that said, what is in the comp plan that this is related to? Something like that.
City Administrator?
And I was just gonna say, I worked to the location that we did that.
Oh, there you go.
And that's how we did that.
And did it work?
And it did work.
All
Well,
right.
if I could just add, I mean, the comprehensive plan in general is very broad-based document. It is a two-step process. I mean, you have the comprehensive plan and then you have implementation of that through development regulations. So these are broad-based goals, are aspirational. They take us in 20 years into the future. This is not a strategic plan. So this is not used on a day-to-day basis, but it's used to help create regulations that will take us to the place that we want to be. So that we can talk more about that, at the workshop, but I just don't want people to get too confused. It's not typically used on a daily basis. This document,
It's a guiding document.
it's a guiding document to
dictatorial document, yeah.
2044. It is going to be including an implementation chapter, so it will hold us accountable with provisions of, what steps can we take, between the 1 and 3 year mark. What steps can we take to implement, in the 3 to 5 year, and then beyond 5 years is long term. So there should be in there, you should be seeing in there like, hey, you're going to need an ordinance. You're going to need to, adopt a plan. You're going to need to do this. Those are the kinds of things, the action items that will be part of the comprehensive plan to help us make sure that we are using it to the best ability. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, okay, so council retreat planning, speaking thereof and thereabouts. And, can I share? I'll throw this up on the screen for. I'm used to a different system. Share screen. I only got one screen. All right, that should come up and let me zoom in. So again, my term for this was spaghetti on the wall. Throw it up on the wall, see what sticks. So I really wanted to get us into a conversation of, I went through, I think the last one I looked at was 2024 or 2004, 2004, sorry, that of prior council retreats and picked off some things and threw some other things in there of, okay, these are potential items for us to have a discussion around. One, take a look at. Two, advice. I probably missed something. And then this is a ridiculous list. So it probably needs to be culled down to some sanity. And then probably given to the council to say, okay, what subjects do you collectively council want to really go after, and talk about? Because this list will take us a week. So I did a couple of things I did, although as an engineer, I have a hard time with them. I did put in there a team building exercise up front. Trust falls. Just, along the lines of, tell something that nobody knows about you or whatever. So a little bit of getting to know each other as a council, mayor and staff that we can go through. I was looking at, I tried to bucket some of those department overviews. What products and services do we as a city provide to citizens? Maybe even a discussion of level of service. Why do we have the number of police officers we have? There's reasons. Same thing with fire, and other things.
Sure. Along those same lines, I'd be curious, to what degree are there other services that other cities offer that we don't, and why don't we? So there's a lot that we do, but there's a lot that we don't do.
Okay, we do more than the average. But yeah, and we don't do animal control.
Right.
Agreed. We charter that, we contract that out to the county, but we as a city don't directly do animal control.
I guess what I'm saying is it'd be good to know for those services that other cities do provide, where can our citizens go? How are we making sure that they have the ability to get that service from somewhere?
Okay, is that a retreat discussion or is that a kind of a maybe homework assignment to staff to say that's probably a council short briefing?
That could be.
Okay. You have that look, why are you?
Well, I'm
Give me
saying-
feedback because I see it coming.
I know that, so budget season's coming up and a
Mhm.
lot of this we will evaluate. But what we will base the budget on is our, actually our priorities, our goals and our objectives. And so we need those
It's in
in
the
order
list.
to go.
This is not a priority order.
Right. So I feel like some of that would be tied, we would have those discussions
Okay.
during that session of the part of the budget or the capital plan. We're starting to work on that, but we won't be ready to present anything during council retreat for those. So we have to keep in mind that we will have a lot of special sessions coming up for those two things. And also the utility rate study will have special sessions. So
Okay, and that's part of the culling process. If we have other venues when these are more appropriate,
right.
we take them off the list.
Right.
I still like to show them on the list, just cross them out and say, we're gonna do this as part of budget discussions, or we're gonna do this as part of a council item later on. But I did want to at least throw some things out there.
Right.
Are you getting up?
So we've got our wonderful budget team developing a budget calendar, right, for council eventually to review. So can certainly have some discussions about where we are financially overall, but we need a good sense of where council and the administration wants to go, right, for the next 2-year period. And that's where a lot of the discussion around the objectives, council objectives are going to come to play. So we can actually make sure that we allocate funding to those priorities overall for council. So understanding where that lies is going to be really critical to how they engage in the budgeting process, along with the departments as well.
Right, and like that, no particular
Order.
priority
Yes,
order.
I got it. Yeah,
Bullet right there. Council priorities, goals, and objectives.
scrolling down. Good.
In here.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Give it to whoever wants a copy. And give Mr.
put that here?
Shambliss one, I'm sorry.
For the department overviews, are you anticipating at that point that to the extent that a department was anticipating or at least wanting us to look at evaluating whatever, moving in a different direction, that would be the point where they would raise that? To have those discussions, or is it just,
It
And
has
overview.
been in the past as part of, to set the context of the department overview, and then there has been discussions in the past. The big one was combining of parks and public works. So in the past, there was a discussion, that preceded discussion of a structural change. Oh, where was that? I don't know.
No?
Sorry. So but I'm not, again, I put it on there for this time just as an educational item. I haven't heard discussions of structural changes of the org for city administration or anything else. So that wasn't my intent of putting it on there this time.
Okay.
Okay, and I did leave, depending on when we do this, we could have discussions of what do we want to do for that March open house. My thinking though is, I wish it happened sooner, but I suspect this will happen after the open house. And we're talking into March. And we're just now talking about potential items for the retreat. Usually the retreats are a little earlier in the year, but I don't know how long this takes to get us through there. Okay. Let me run through the list and then we can. Anticipated goals and projects. So just again, to opportunity for the administration to keep council aware of things that are going on downtown phase 12, whatever, as appropriate. That will need feedback if there are items appropriate for there. We do have our rules and procedures for council rules and procedures. I'm not proposing big changes in there, but it might be good for refresher just to run through it real quick. We haven't had a code of ethics conversation, haven't needed it, but we ought to be at least aware that that thing's out there. That may be something we do outside of this, but it's something we'll probably ought to pick up on. It has been an issue in the past. It's not an issue for this council.
Sure.
Go ahead.
For some of these things, the infrastructure discussions, programs and projects. One possibility would be if we scheduled a separate tour, like we did a year or two ago, to go around. See what the status is.
That could be part of this, that could be part of the CIP planning, so you could see what's been completed and then what projects we are projecting.
I suppose if we're looking at saving time, then that could be a way to still address that, but being actually able to look at these things, and then it wouldn't have to be on this list.
Right.
No.
And then potentially, I threw it on because it was on past, review of internal roles, responsibilities. I'm personally, I don't think we're at the stage where we need to have that. But again, it was on a past council, I'll put it up. Council rules, procedures review, public outreach might be a conversation we want to have. Economic development, sustainability, we do have goals and objectives on there. let's refocus. What are we doing? What does council like to see in that area? I did put in there along the lines we talked about. You can take Suquamish Hills off there. Sorry, it was a copy paste from prior. But master plan urban growth. What is, I'm not sure that this council has had a discussion of what exactly are our urban growth areas. And that may just be a map we throw up and say, here they are, or whatever. We did say in our goals and objective, affordable housing. So do we want to have a discussion around that, or where we're headed and what we're doing?
Yeah, on the UGA, their community development committee looked at some of that, and where is actually areas that are buildable, what isn't buildable, due to all the sorts of regulations around floodplains and all that. And it could be useful for the rest of the council to make sure that they're up to date on that, because sometimes it can be easy to look at that area and say, hey, there's the solution to all of our problems, and it isn't for a number of reasons. And it's just good for us to be aware, and also provide the rest of the community the opportunity to understand the same.
I don't know if would you like a little bit more information on it right now?
Not right now.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Or should I have said yes? You have that. You're leaning into the mic.
But that goes with the resolution that's going to CD, or you already saw it. Well, actually last night, potentially
Oh, right,
reducing.
yeah.
All the detail is in there about places we can build, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have
It's
the
in that
lock,
memo.
we
Yeah,
have the
that one.
lockdown on it.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty locked down.
Right.
So, I mean, we are moving forward with we can bring this up on Monday at the workshop roundtable about the resolution for an adjusted growth target.
That's your call. I'm not intending to drive the next council meeting with this list.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll tackle that when we get there on the agenda.
All right, affordable housing, maybe have a discussion of, and this was again, prior agendas, relationship with the tribe. You could expand it to say relationship tribe, North Bend, King County, however you want to work that. A conversation which had some heat, excuse the contrary pun, in the past, but hasn't lately, is water rights. I mean, is there activity in regards to that? Should we be focusing what's going on and how awareness for the council, and maybe anything we can do? Go ahead.
Yeah, on the water rights issue, I believe that came up, especially with regard to the Snoqualmie Hills vision, that there's a lot of talk around water rights. And I'm not sure how much it's come up since then as a major council issue of, is there a map that says where we get water and how much and all that? So I think that it could be useful for the council to get a briefing on that. Whether it has to be on the council retreat or roundtable or something else. That's a separate issue, but just saying, I think that would be a really nice thing for myself and perhaps other new council members, of which there are like 6 of us.
Okay. And other ones, past meeting had after the usually Friday and Saturday in the evening, there was a reception just for other third parties, merchants, whatever's to come and have discussions with council and administration, just whatever subject they want. Again, I throw it out. It was on the prior agenda. Tourism and other potential partnerships, which may be an interesting conversation now with the Salish and whatnot going in as tribal land. Is we'd often talked about how to try to pull all this together. That may take a different form now of discussion than it had in the past. When we did the garbage contract to begin with, it was a item for a council retreat. I think based on the conversation tonight, that one probably gonna come off the list. That's going to go to the council discussion near term. I do have, so I guess homework, so take a look at this. Give me feedback, and Mayor asked the same thing from you. Yeah, that's a good item. No, that's gonna be handled somewhere else. And from there, we can call this list down and then maybe have a list menu for the rest of council to say, each get 3 votes, pick one, and we'll start to work an agenda around that.
Can I ask for a little tweak to the homework?
Yeah.
Can I ask people to think about what should be in committee? Or
Yeah.
what reports are you not getting in committee that you want?
Mhm.
Because what I heard going through this list was a lot of stuff that should be covered in committee that people aren't communicating with the liaison with the committee saying, bring this here. Because I know on a lot of those things, there's a lot of work being done and people are ready to talk about it. It's just, they're busy doing the work, so they're not coming. So I just would ask that you throw that in the mix when you're thinking about things.
Two follow-on questions I had. I know I started this down this path, but it's probably of benefit for us to get a facilitator to, if minimal, to help us out with the execution of the meeting, but probably also to get him engaged in our early on discussions. So I can drag some names from prior agendas, but if the administration has names of individuals that might be good facilitators, can we have that discussion and talk about potential engagement?
Sure, we need to come up with some dates so we can also think about that.
Okay, let's think about dates, and that follows my next question, which I apologize is not on your thing, but handwritten on mine is, and it may be partially dependent on the homework assignment, whatever. Are we gonna do this as a Saturday, as a Friday, Saturday, as a half day Friday, and a full day Saturday?
As a
So,
Friday,
huh?
as a Friday,
Friday,
Half day, what?
Friday,
just a Friday.
Or just a Friday?
and also location.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, we've had it at Salish, we've had it at the club, we've had it other places, but yeah, we can talk about that because we'll have to make arrangements. Go ahead and Casper Johnson.
Sorry, staff, I work on Fridays. It'd be very challenging for me to do a Friday.
Understood. I've missed a few Friday council retreat meetings for that very reason. And it may be that if we do Friday and a Saturday, that Saturday we focus in on like council goals and priorities, where it would be a council discussion. Okay, and we can let some people have a day versus us who said, pick me, I want to do this.
No, sorry, I didn't have my hand up. I was just.
Oh,
At that point. How has it typically been done over the past like 6 years in terms of how much time you've spent? I remember last year was 2 days.
it's typically
Friday,
around
Saturdays,
two
usually, right?
2 or a day and a half. I've only saw one agenda where it was 1 day. Okay, he has his hand up. Go ahead, Catherine Johnson. You had the look, but he has his hand up.
I am open to a 1-day retreat myself.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Mayor?
And we are too, because I don't want to tie staff up, especially on Saturday. We know, like we said, there's a lot of special meetings that are coming up. But there's a lot of new council members, right? And I think to me, it'd be great. This is the time where you guys can get together and figure out, like I said, the goal, the priorities, the goals and objectives, and team building. And I just attended a council retreat, or a retreat for SCA board members. And one of the things they had on there was, status quo or shake things up. So what are some things that we want to keep doing, that we've been doing, or there's something that is, start doing new things. There's a lot of discussion that you can have, or ideas and council connections with public. Well, I know it is dangerous, but
It's
it also
dangerous.
shows some ideas out there that you maybe like to do something differently. So.
Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, something that I wrote down here, just based on this list, it just kind of feels like this blah in my head. So the
It
question is, what is sort of a desired, is there an overarching desired outcome? It doesn't have to be, it could be that it's piecemeal and this part has this outcome, this part has this outcome. Or is there something more overall? And then after the mayor's comment, I was thinking, hey, what about under this section where we have our goals and objectives? A look back at our objectives that we came up with last year and what have we accomplished? There are things on that list that I think we could check off and say, hey, look at what we did. There are other things we say, hey, that actually ended up being a bad idea. Let's take that off the list. And then there are other things where we missed out. So I think it could be useful to take a look back at that last list.
Oh, yeah,
thought there's
I
a
would
lot of good
start
stuff
that as square one of that discussion.
there.
And I
It's
think
like,
that
hey, look at what we
discussion
did
is
last time.
appropriate and good for a council retreat.
I would love to see tourism put up with economic development and economic sustainability. I think that that's something that we should really be looking at, especially with respect, excuse me, to downtown and our merchants down here. And I would like to see that up towards, I guess, the council priorities discussion, or at least pretty high up on the list to make sure that we get to it. I think that those are very important, as well as the affordable housing.
So, so if, back to your question, so if we're, and it may help on the list, major objectives is, one of them is just, you can get to know each other, so a little bit of team building and whatnot. Two, review those council goals and objectives and determine, well, status quo, shake things up.
Right.
In regards to that, and how do we want to, change or tweak? What's worked, what hasn't worked? So that may be, that'd be a good discussion. What, any other broad objectives? I had a broad objective in my head of giving, like I said, some background information for what we're going to do as a council. The case in point I have, let's throw a schematic of the water system up and describe, again, what a PRV is. So that, it's nothing else, it's just background information for future discussions. When we get into those rate studies and somebody says, well, in 3 years, PRV's got to be replaced, or we want a PRV up on the hill halfway to the casino for these reasons. You know what it is. Go ahead.
In not that I play too many video games, but there's one called City Skylines where they have you put in underground, some of the staff are smiling, I know, where you put in underground a bunch of yeah, there's good and bad, but you put underground a bunch of pipes, right? And then it shows you through the city where the pipes flow, and you put the sewage just directly out into the water, just dumps out. That's very realistic. But point being, I was wondering if there was a map of some kind that's kind of similar that says, hey, here's where the water actually goes. Not necessarily to the like individual house level, obviously, but something along those lines. Could be kind of cool for us to be aware
So
of.
there are some security concerns
Ah, okay,
about-
that's fair.
sharing some of this information and spreading it.
That's
far away.
fair.
Okay.
So I welcome individual inquiries. We'll give you a tour of every
Right.
PRV in the city. But I don't think we want to get that detailed.
That makes sense.
It is the water supply.
There had been in the past.
I
And like I said,
understand.
that's why I use the term schematic, separated from geography.
I understand.
Schematic, just for background information, but all right. Did you have your hand up again, or?
I'm debating. I'll send you an email.
Okay.
I'll just add logistically also, there's the potential option that council may want to consider is splitting up the council retreat. So you can have it at multiple points throughout the year. So it could be a half day Saturday this day, a half day Saturday at the second quarter, a half day, third quarter, for example, instead of having it just once a year for the most part. So I just offer that up as well.
I like the idea of a 6-month check-in as well, which could be done either in that context or a different one.
Okay.
See how we're doing on our goals and objectives. Just kidding. Sorry.
Go
Swear to
ahead.
God.
I like
Just
the
water
idea.
in the-
The 6 month check-in rather than a 12 to 14 month check-in.
Yeah.
Might not be a bad idea. And then I had something else, but it left me.
Okay, so give me some feedback on this. We should narrow this down pretty quickly if we're gonna, if we wait too long, there won't be 6 months left of the year to have that second check-in. To drive out. Go ahead.
Remember what it was. So some of these also do kind of sound almost like tutorials for council members. And I'd rather spend the retreat with as much conversation as we can, and perhaps some of these things like water rights being a presentation to council at a meeting or something like that for 15 minutes or something, rather than at the retreat.
I'm hearing that. That's why I'm partially backing off. Although I keep bringing up the PRV, I'm partially backing off of the PRV. That kind of just.
I'll email out the water system master plan to the council in the morning.
It's a good read.
Yeah.
It's about yay thick, but it's,
I'll throw the wastewater in too, so
Excellent.
that we'll really get loaded up.
well, and particularly for Public Works Committee, myself included, it'd be good to do a refresher of that. Okay. All right, so again, probably goals and objectives. Some team building, more working than lecture, more interaction. And we're probably talking one day, like a Saturday with, we'll do the day 2 later on in the year as a check-in to see how things going, maybe do mid-course correction. Not, okay. Give me feedback on this list. I'll come up with another draft and we'll have a discussion.
Are there any days that you will be out of school that are coming up?
Friday, Saturday.
I don't think I'm alone. But let's see. Yeah, they did just cancel one day that we were gonna have off on a Friday. Yeah, the 22nd of March. Yeah, so
You can't, you do have it off, you don't have it off.
I don't, because we had a snow day, so we lost that one.
Bellevue doesn't snow.
No. You know what? There might be.
How do we
I
have
think
snow
about it.
days with Zoom?
It's not
We
everyone
don't do
has
Zoom,
access.
yeah. Actually, you know what? Well, no, that's too soon. Probably the 23rd of February. It's probably too short notice, right?
That's too short
We
notice.
were
to
hoping
find
that
out.
date.
All right.
It's just
Yeah.
6, yeah.
Okay. All right.
We could. We've had just a bad idea. Let me check something real quick. Now we'll come back here. If we're talking we were talking the council open house toward the end of March. We could follow that up with council retreat. Some of the discussion that happens in that council open house may feed into the council retreat, be added for discussion. So potentially looking, that would put us like March 30th. It's kind of a tentative date.
I thought the open house was February 29th.
I thought we moved that out a month because it was too close to
It's not.
the other things.
Oh, it's not.
We have the town hall, the February 28th for community center,
Right.
Yeah, so we
Maybe
moved that out
have
to end of March, sorry.
March
Yeah, I have a
28th.
hold on my calendar for the 28th of March. Yeah.
Yep, that's
So we could tentatively plan March 30th as a council retreat. And at least, major chunk of that day would be council goals and objectives. Let's go through, see where we are. Like you said, see what worked, what didn't work. If we want to do any tweaks, we want to do any wholesale, cut it, put something else in and go through there.
I would like to point out that the next day is Easter Sunday, which I know, or I think that that's the date that we do the eggs. Is that right?
Yes.
So,
That Saturday. Did you have the Friday? on?
no, I'm just saying that the 30th might be challenging because of the egg.
Although, that's two different groups of staff, so I don't think.
Okay.
we'll worry about that. Unless you were planning on attending, there you
You
go.
could bring the eggs and the candy in and we could fill for you guys.
Wait, the egg hunt is on the 30th?
I believe so.
Yes, it can be a religious.
Film sticks. All right. Computer just died. Okay. So is that not like the 30th is not sounding good? So
Midwinter break, that was the 23rd of February that I mentioned. Well, it's the whole week.
yeah, but that's really soon.
Yeah. I mean, it.
Well,
no,
either
I
that
can't
or
do
we
that
go
one
the
yet.
opposite. We could do it the week before the council open house. And part of the discussion should be,
Here it is.
are we ready for open house? Be too late at that stage, but at least we can have discussions if there's anything we need to shore up in leading into that.
23rd works for me.
It's for last
I
year.
may be out of
This is-
town.
Okay, that's what's on the website.
I believe I will be out of town.
And let's do, so let's talk about the 23rd or 30th, but let's talk at next council
Okay,
as potential
that's true.
dates
If
or,
we make a decision here and then, half the council is gonna be gone.
and the
Yeah,
council may decide none of the above and we pick something else. But
Yeah.
let's get them involved in the
agree.
conversation when we do this.
I
Okay.
agree.
All right. Time is it now? It is 7 o'clock. I need to do more, I'll confess, I need to do more homework on the open house discussion. So if we're okay, we can forego that and get that discussion in our next meeting. Can somebody bring up the agenda? See, on my laptop.
Yeah.
What's the next agenda item?
The next is just the additional.
That's
Informational,
upcoming,
and
so
then
then
it's
we'll
the
go
agenda.
into draft agenda. All right, can we bring up the draft agenda for council next week?
Do you have it handy? Do you? I don't.
Need it. Oh,
No,
help you with that?
I cheat.
if you just want to look at it. Here's this, what that one.
I know we do have some alterations proposed. We have a roundtable proposed at 6 p.m. That was your roundtable? Okay, around the comprehensive plan. Okay, land use housing element recommendations, adjournment, all right. The regular staff meeting starting at 7 p.m. Call to order, pledge of allegiance, agenda approval, public hearings, presentations. We do have some, we have an appointment.
Appointment. We have the 2024 council liaison appointments and Arts Commission appointment.
An Arts Commission appointment. Okay. And I intend to try to get with everybody this week and narrow down on the liaisons. I've had some conversations, have not completed them. But we'll get through that. All right, and then we have a proclamation of Twin Peaks Day. Never got into that show. Consent agenda, approval of city council minutes, approval of claims approval report. And then we'll get into the regular committee reports, public safety, fire department year-end accreditation report. That one, I believe we're taking off. Okay, that one will come out. I see nothing else for public safety. We'll get into community development. A discussion around Suquamish housing target. I assume that's the discussion. a recap of the discussion between us and King County okay. Is that is there action there? Or is that discussion?
It's a resolution.
Okay, it's a resolution, all right. Public Parks and Public Works Committee.
Solid waste.
Yeah, we have a garbage contract discussion. I think
Is
that was
the-
it.
Is there an actual proposal or is this just a broader discussion? About the topic of.
It's a broader discussion, but it is asking for council direction.
Right.
Okay, but not,
Right, it's not like we have a contract.
no.
Right.
It takes a while. Finance Administration Committee, didn't we have an agenda build today we discussed?
Yes.
We have a red line,
Yep.
so I think we agreed to go ahead and pull and bring it forward, at least for first reading.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll put that agenda bill in and you'll attach the red line to the agenda bill, please. And we'll do first reading and then second reading following. We won't do council retreat agenda approval. Why don't you strike approval, just have discussion?
Okay.
And at least then we could discuss dates, and kind of discussion that we'll have. It's looking like a 1 day primarily focused around what goals and objectives review, any alterations and moving from there. Okay, and with the potential of a mid-year or midterm another council retreat at that stage. Okay. And mayor's report, commission liaison reports, department reports. And I think we have placeholders for executive sessions.
I think there's quite a few.
We have
actually.
actual executive session.
Actuals, okay.
4 of them
We have 4, so we'll have 4 executive sessions.
or more.
Or more.
Okay, we'll try to keep
Short
the
agenda,
conversation short up
Long
above.
executive session.
Great. Bring snacks.
Yeah. business. Make it-
Bring caffeine.
Debating if we move that after, but no, the mechanics don't work out. All right, and then we'll go to adjournment from there. Was there anything else I missed, Dina, from our?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right, everybody okay with that? Just moving forward? All right. If you'll make those alterations, we'll move that with that agenda for next council meeting. Thank you. All right, any other items for discussion tonight? Any pop-ups? Come on, Drew, you've been up a couple times.
I think you're getting too comfortable with black.
All right, with that, I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and unless there are objections, we are adjourned. Thank you all tonight.
Thank you.